All right, we're going to hop right into it. We're going to talk about Montelukast this morning, brand name Singular. This is a medication that came onto the market in the late 90s for asthma and allergy support. I don't think, so if someone knows, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that Montelukast was given as a single agent. It was usually in addition to other medications. I took this medication. And to my surprise, there have been some developments in its negative side effects. I've prescribed this medication when I was a student, when I had prescriptive rights in Washington State, up in Seattle. This is what the tablet looks like, a little square tablet with a little I and then 114. And then they've got another one that's a U with 220. That is the one that I took. That's interesting why they have it different. Interesting. Okay, so this medication is not recommended for people under the age of 2 years old. And as of March of 2020, amidst all the COVID shenanigans, we're no longer calling them black box warnings. We're calling them boxed warnings to make them sound more marketable, I'm going to guess. Everything with pharmaceutical industry seems to be about marketing and how can we make it seem like this medication is going to be, this, that, and the other thing, and it's going to be the gold plate, if you will. So the black box warning, the boxed warning for Montelukast is if you develop unusual changes in your mood, behavior such as agitation, confusion, depression, sleep issues, compulsive behaviors, hallucinations, or suicidal thoughts or actions, stop taking the medication. This is the boxed warning that was put on in March of 2020. So what exactly do we use this medication for? Because that sounds pretty significant, right? Like those are very large issues. And my understanding of anxiety and depression in teenagers now is very high. And so how many kids, I believe the statistic for people suffering with asthma is 25% of Americans, 1 in 4 will be taking some kind of medication for their asthma. And in my case, I had pretty severe asthma. I had a nebulizer, little thing you plug into the wall. I had a rescue inhaler, and then I also took one of the little Advair Discus things. And then, those things weren't working so good, so they added the Montelukast, and I was already on multiple anti-allergy medications because I had such severe allergies as a kiddo. Okay, so you definitely want to talk to your doctor. And if you have any history, and I would say if you have any family history of mental illness or psychosis, be mindful. Be mindful. Okay. If you have polyketonuria, PKU, which is a metabolic disease usually diagnosed when you're an infant, be mindful that the chewable Montelukast has phenylalanine. And the problem is like alanine is hard it's impossible for PKU sufferers to process. Let's see. So it's not a fast-acting medication. So I see this often in my practice. I will educate patients on how to take their asthma medication, even though I do not prescribe it. Yeah, you're having asthma attacks every day, but you're not using your medication the way you should be. So let's have a conversation about that. So Montelukast is not a fast-acting rescue medication for asthma, like an albuterol inhaler that will stop an asthma attack immediately. Let's see. Oh, the main reason people get prescribed Montelukast is for exercise-induced bronchoconstriction, which is the asthma, exercise-induced asthma. And you want to make sure to take your medication at least 2 hours before exercise, and then do not take an additional dose in a 24-hour period. If you overdose, call Poison Helpline. They are great there. They're toxicologists. If they don't have the answer, they will call you back in a few minutes. They're really great. Typical allergic reaction. A lot of people say they have allergies to medications, but if you're not actually getting hives, blisters, severe itching, difficulty breathing, swelling of your face, lips, tongue, throat, probably not a true allergy, probably an intolerance or something that is in the medication is irritating to you. Something else that's an interesting side effect is signs of blood vessel inflammation. So flu-like symptoms, severe sinus pain, a skin rash, numbness, pins and needles, etc. And again, like the slew of psychiatric irritability, restlessness, anxiety, depression, confusion, problems with memory or attention. So anybody that has maybe been newly diagnosed with ADHD since they've been on this medication, or newly diagnosed with anxiety, or newly diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and they are taking this medication, maybe this medication is causing symptoms of the mental emotional realm. So what's interesting about Montelukast is there are very few things that actually cross the blood-brain barrier, the BBB. It's a very protective layer in our brain. And from an alternative perspective, if you have intestinal permeability or leaky gut, there's a good chance that you also have a leaky blood-brain barrier. But regardless, Montelukast can surpass that and gets built up in the central nervous system. Let's see. So common side effects. These are things that are well known and established: stomach pain, diarrhea, fever, flu symptoms. Remember, you want to talk to your doctor if you're having that. Ear pain or feeling full in your ear, trouble hearing, headache, cold symptoms, etc. Okay. So, and by the way, this that I'm using, it's drugs.com. It's a free tool. I am a huge advocate for people taking a peek at their medications. And, if your doctor isn't looking at this, you can show them this resource. I use this with my patients. I show them this. I recommend, hey, you start taking new medication, make sure you're asking your doctor, hey, is this safe if blah, blah, blah. All right. So we got that boxed warning. We talked about adverse events, contraindications, the neuropsychiatric events. Yeah. And this is not like gentle. This is like major depression, major episodes of mania, disorientation, weird behavior. What do they call it? Dysphemia, stuttering. That's an interesting one. Obsessive compulsive symptoms, restlessness, suicidal thoughts and behavior, including suicide, tic, tremor. So causing a lot of like what I would call ticky twitchy neurological symptoms. And again, this medication gets stored in our central nervous system. So that kind of makes sense that, this is problematic for our nervous system. Okay. Because of the risk of neuropsychiatric events, the benefits of Montelukast sodium may not outweigh the risks in some patients, particularly when symptoms of the disease may be mild or adequately treated with alternative therapies. Reserve use of Montelukast for patients with allergic rhinitis, runny nose, who have inadequate response or intolerance to alternate therapies. Now, when they say alternate therapies, they're talking about medications. They're talking about strictly drugs. They're not talking about making sure you have proper histamine degradation by ensuring you have vitamin C, which is the only vitamin our body can't make. We have to get it from our food and supplementation. Let's see, NAC, N-acetylcysteine, also helps with allergic rhinitis. Making sure you have proper minerals, so a good cold infusion of stinging nettle tea might be beneficial here. So from an alternative practitioner perspective, there is so much we can do for asthma and allergies. And I'll let you know, I don't have asthma anymore. And yeah, I still deal with some seasonal allergies, but I only need to use medication. Oh, I don't know. I used it for the first time in years in summer of 2020. It was pretty bad. Okay, we talked about that. Okay, well, that makes sense. You shouldn't, if you have an aspirin allergy, you shouldn't take aspirin medication while you're taking Montelukast. That seems obvious. But we got to say it. Okay, so the scary thing to me about this medication, and I know this medication has benefits, but the scary thing about this medication is Merck, who is the manufacturer of the initial singular trade name that came out in the late 90s, purportedly knew about these neuropsychiatric symptoms, especially in young people. We see this trend in young people taking medications, antidepressants, SSRIs. They all have boxed warnings for suicidal ideation. Young people's brains are still developing. They are not, our brains aren't fully developed until we're like 23, 24, 25 in some humans. So it's really important that we try to minimize drug use across the board. And I'm not just talking about street drugs. I'm talking about medications in general. If you do not need to truly take medication and you've exhausted all of your other potentials, then medication is part of the therapeutic order. It's on the top of the train, and sometimes we need it, right? It's true. Sometimes we need it. Now, there is a class action lawsuit against Singulair. Let's see here. So this was really interesting. And yes, this is from an attorney's website. I'm not affiliated. This is just me doing my digging. Okay, so in 2006, this organization is claiming that some of the first scientific studies and reports are published to confirm the link between Montelukast and mental health issues. And, you know, anybody that's looked into big companies that make buku bucks, they've all got black science departments. We see this with DuPont and the PFAS that happened over on the East Coast in Virginia. I think it was Virginia, where they were actually dumping waste into the river and it was killing cattle and their teeth were rotting out of their head because of the heavy fluorination from the PFAS. Now, I would venture to bet that Merck is a pretty savvy company as well, and they would want to cross their T's and dot their I's. So, and then 2020 is when this black box, or the boxed warning, we changed it recently. Okay. So in 2019, 9 million people in the United States had a Singulair prescription. 9 million people. Okay. And it was either as an add-on or alternative to inhaled corticosteroids. So inhaled, whether that's a long-acting asthma medication or short-acting asthma medication like albuterol. 2.3 million patients who received the Singulair prescriptions were under 17 years old, roughly 30% of users. So that is in 2019. Roughly 30% of the pharmaceutical Montelukast users are adolescents. Okay, so this is where Singulair is that it can cross the blood-brain barrier. We talked about this. Singulair's ability to cross the blood-brain barrier means that the drug gradually accumulates in the central nervous system and eventually the brain tissue. Okay. Prolonged Singulair users are twice as likely to develop mental health disorders. Children who use Montelukast are even higher risk for the side effect. Again, our brains are not fully developed until we're 25 years old. Okay. And I just, yeah. Okay, but we're going on facts here, not like feelings and emotions. Yeah, aggression. Yeah. So the net result of this black box warning is that the medication should not be prescribed unless alternative medications are no longer an option, right? So I don't know if there's truly a class action. I think that there's at this point just some individual lawsuits, and there hasn't been enough cases yet for there to be a class action lawsuit. But I sure hope that we see a class action. I have a personal stake in it because I was diagnosed with all kinds of crazy mental health issues after starting to take Montelukast when I was 12 or something like that, because I had really, really bad asthma. Okay. Okay, so let's take a peek at a couple other adverse symptoms. We talked about stomach pain, fever, trauma, digestive system issues. So things like heartburn, gastritis, dizziness. We got elevated liver enzymes. Like, why is this happening? You know, the problem with medications is they do one thing, they suppress one thing, which is neither here nor good nor bad, and then other symptoms happen because of that. The body is innately intelligent, and when we whack-a-mole one symptom down and another set of symptoms pop up, oh, now you have anxiety. Oh, now you have bipolar disorder. Oh, now you have suicidal ideation. Okay, your asthma is better controlled, sort of, but now you have this other slew of mental health issues that you need to now take other mental health medications for, rather than addressing the root cause of allergies and asthma, which is immune system dysregulation, likely gut related. You know, a lot of things Hippocrates said, like most illness starts in the gut. And I was pretty against this when I first started practicing, but I'll tell you, it seems to be true. Okay, so we talked about Montelukast, came onto the market in the late 90s. A box warning was put on it in 2020 for neuropsychiatric events, especially in young people. 30% of singular users are under the age of 17. So in my mind, those 2.3 million users are at higher risk of developing neuropsychiatric issues. So if your child or your family member is on Montelukast and they have developed new onset symptoms of psychiatric issues, I really encourage you to talk to your doctor and see if there's another option. And if they don't have another option, find a naturopathic doctor. Find someone in your area that understands both medications and how biochemistry works in your body, so we can figure out how to support histamine breakdown, support that immune system, help heal the gut. All right, Montelukast.